So our next presentation is from Kara Dawson. So substance use disorder is really a collective ailment, even as each individual experiences its effects differently, including family members who are not using. Apart from the constant stress of watching a loved one struggle with addiction, the circumstances of substance use can turn violent. The World Health Organization tells us that alcohol consumption, especially at harmful and hazardous levels, is a major contributor to the occurrence of intimate partner violence, and links between the two are manifold. Kara Dawson and her son will now share their story of abuse at the hands of her ex-husband and her difficult journey to safety.
Thank you all for having us here today. My name is Kara Dawson, and I am a quality improvement advisor for Qsource, which is the quality improvement organization for the state of Indiana. And with me today is my son, Zachary Dawson, and he is a senior at Purdue University studying mechanical engineering. And we're just really excited to be here today to talk to everybody about the effects of substance use disorder on the family, me as the mom, and Zachary as a child growing up with someone who had a substance use disorder. For me, growing up, I had a very normal, great childhood. Always looked forward to getting married, having children, kind of the white picket fence persona that everybody always dreams of. I ended up meeting Tony when I was 27 years old. I had graduated from nursing school. I was working. I was a professional. Everything seemed great. Me and Tony had gone to high school together, and we were friends in high school. For me, I noticed the substance use even before probably we were married, but chose not to take those red flags that I saw, and thought that I could help him change. And so he was in the Air Force and was a part of Desert Storm, and came back and found out very soon after he had come back that I was actually pregnant with Zachary. And that's when I noticed his substance of choice was alcohol and large amounts of alcohol. And that's when I noticed it getting worse, is when he came back. So for me, everything was normal. I saw the substance use as a problem very early on, then felt like that it was my duty as his wife and a soon-to-be mom that to help him and to get through this situation.
I guess it was a part of my life from the moment that I was born. So to me, it was regular everyday life, him being that way. And I guess I didn't really realize it was any different than what, say, another kid would have until second, third grade. I remember, like, you go over to a friend's house and it's not that way. And it becomes apparent pretty quick that there's something going on. And you always kind of lived behind this wall where we were in this perfect little bubble, and we didn't want anybody to know that this was going on, and it always was.
Some of the signs and symptoms that we noticed as I got farther into this relationship, we dealt with a lot of violence. He was very physically abusive to me. He was mentally abusive to me, and emotionally abusive. He felt like, because of his job and his duty with the in the military, that now everybody owed him. And so, like Zachary said, we kind of lived in this bubble. It was very embarrassing for me as a professional person. Didn't want anybody to know, hey, when I go home, almost every night I'm getting beat up. And almost every night I'm going home and I have a sick feeling in my stomach because I know that he's been drinking. It's almost paralyzing. So no lights on in the house. had to be quiet. We all got used to not drinking our drinks. We kind of laugh about it now, but we didn't get ice in our drinks because that might wake him up. And if we came home and he had his rage, once he was out, we were good. So it became a pretty consistent pattern. Um, and so that's really when I really realized that something was wrong, um, and that this was way deeper than I even maybe had thought about. The violence just kept escalating, um, and I could see it affecting my children. Zachary, being the oldest, really kind of took on that protector role for everybody and really took on that father role for his two younger siblings, and then relying on my parents who lived in town to help get him to school, help pick him up from school. Where are they going to go? Because when I get the call at work that you're going to bring me money now, even if it was the last $20 that we had, trying to deal with all of that and not wanting anybody else in the community, especially the people I worked with, to know, because I had people coming to me in the same situations and I'm giving them advice. Oh, he's not going to hurt you if you leave. You need to get out of that. And then feeling very hypocritical as I'm driving home, knowing what I'm driving home to. Looking back, we had very extensive workups through the VA. When he came back from Desert Storm, he did some relief efforts in Bosnia and Somalia. And so we knew that there was some mental aspect happening with him when he came back. Initially, we couldn't get that mental health diagnoses, right? But I knew pretty early on, just from my medical background, that we were dealing with something above just substance use. And he would talk frequently about the alcohol took him away. He didn't have to think about things, right? But, the blinds being closed, no lights on. He had a bat at every entrance of the house, very paranoid. When planes would fly over the house, you couldn't approach him from the bat. Finally, pretty late into our marriage, he did get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I think the failure in my mind was that I can't help him. As much as I try to control the situation, the more out of control it was. And even with that diagnosis and him being on the medications for post-traumatic stress, it's hard to get them to go into those appointments. So if he's drinking at least every other day, he's not going to make it there. There was a lot of mental health issues that for him, and along the way, mental health issues probably for me as well. You can't leave me because if you leave me, I'm going to kill you. I'll find you. I'll take the kids. You'll never find us. So it was for me, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And really started feeling like that he was that enemy in my life. He was a great guy to everybody else out on the street, right? And no one would know. Did I see it as a disease when I was in the thick of it? No. Because what I heard so many times, you are the one that isn't being reasonable. Maybe not. Maybe I wasn't, but living in that situation, I needed someone on my side to say, this is what you need to do. And that isn't what I got. And it may be because we were within a system that very much caters to servicemen and women, which rightfully so, but can't forget the families that you're sending them back to. I needed to be more prepared. for what I might encounter. Sometimes I have to check myself even today to say it is a disease process, and be more understanding, because when you live it, it makes you angry and kind of callous. I didn't have that support, and part of it's my fault because I didn't want anybody else to know. It was an embarrassment for me, and I thought it made me look weak. Um, I wanted people to think that my house was happy, and everything was normal, when really it was very dark and gloomy.
As a kid, I think the things that I saw, number one was we were always trying to not be at home when we were home. I mean, as I got older and started realizing, it became obvious pretty quick that there were things that were being hidden. Um, there was always, I mean, the alcohol was always tried to be hidden, but it became hard because if he left, we came home, it's all around the house. So, and it became really apparent really quick that it wasn't the same as what other kids had, especially as I got older. I feel like I did kind of take on that protector role because as I started becoming cognizant of the fact that it's going on and I'm realizing what it is, of course, I don't want my little brother and little sister to feel the way I feel or see what I see, kind of in the same way that mom was. So I was getting up in the morning, making sure people were getting ready. Grandma came and took us to school because mom's at work. Dad's passed out. You don't want to wake him up. So I'm the one getting up. I'm the one doing things that I guess, to be fair, kids my age probably weren't doing. I think it changed who I was early on. I mean, it affected me socially because now I feel like I matured. I was somewhere up here and kids around me, they aren't worrying about what I'm worrying about at home. So I can't relate to, like, this kid lost his Pokemon card. I'm going home trying to keep my little brother and little sister from seeing things that are going on at home. And looking back on it, it's different than what it felt like then, because then it was just, you wanted him to go away. You wanted it to be normal. You knew that it was possible for it to be normal, but you knew that he had to go away. And I mean, there's times where you get pretty dark in your mind about, especially as a kid, I mean, about him going away, whatever it took for him to go away, and wanting it to be normal. And sometimes it felt like that wasn't ever going to happen.
The stigma for me that maybe I was so concerned about is, number one, I was a nurse. I'm supposed to be a strong person. I'm a mom. I'm a protector of my kids. I don't want people to know that my house is not running like it should be in my mind, right? I don't want people to know that my husband is abusing me and I'm staying. What's going to happen if I leave and something happens to me? And then there would be those days that he wasn't drinking, and I'm sorry. And he was the person that I knew, that I had met, that I knew I wanted to be with. And how can I leave him? If I leave, do I look like the bad guy now that I've left someone who is going through this? And I'm supposed to be able to help people. I'm a nurse, medical. How come I can't help him? I help all these other people. How come I can't help him? Maybe it is me. Maybe when he tells me it's me, it is me. I didn't want people to see me as weak. I didn't know that I needed help. When you're in the thick of it, I don't know that you really know that you need the help. And if I get help, does that also make me not look like I'm in control and that I'm strong? Never mind that. When I was in the situation, to go and get the help meant that I knew I was going to go home and reap a repercussion from him, because he didn't want people to see him in that light either. I guess it was always an excuse. But I do think there's a huge negative stigma in our society about substance use disorder. Um, they're no good. They're not, they're not going to get any better. And why would she stay? It's her own fault, right? And after I was with him for 14 years, um, and I finally knew that I had to make that break. And I did so, but it was humbling. I had to go live with my parents again. I had 3 kids um, who, after I left, I realized that they were much more affected by that substance use than what I even knew at the time. There was a huge amount of guilt for me, thinking that I wasn't I wasn't the mom I needed to be, maybe, but knowing that in the thick, if I left, in my mind, how can I leave? I know that I'm gonna have to let the kids go and see him. And the thought of them being with him by themselves was worse to me than what I thought I was doing to try to protect them at the time. When I was really in the thick of the whole process and that life, that I really even knew that I needed the help. But looking back, I was really just enabling a situation to continue to spiral out of control.
Growing up, I mean, when when I was that age, we didn't talk about it. He was around once in a while, just enough to pull off the facade that he was around, he was normal. Me knowing well in the back of my mind that that's absolutely not how it was, and we didn't talk about it. We hid it. People didn't come over, and I don't know that I ever had any friends that said anything about not coming over to our house, but I knew why, so it didn't ever strike me as odd, I guess, growing up that nobody came over, because I don't guess I felt like growing up I was at home that often. So it wasn't odd to me to not be at home.
So yeah, I mean, looking back at it now, obviously I left the situation. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. The scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life, hands down. Most humble thing I've ever had to do, live with my parents for a summer. You feel like you're a kid again, but also a mom. And now my kids are listening to my parents more than they're listening to me, because my dad kind of was that father figure for them for a minute. But looking back now, obviously, I see things much differently because I'm not in that situation. I'm not fearful anymore. Would I have done things differently? Absolutely. Do I have guilt every day of my life? Absolutely. I wish I would have left way before I did. And then part of me says if I would have left too early, then I wouldn't have all 3 of my children, right? Which were the biggest blessing ever. But most certainly, I wish that I would have gotten out of the situation. And most certainly, I wish that my kids would have never had to be in that situation. And I can separate for him. In my mind, I get it's a disease. I get that it really wasn't who he was, because I knew him before that, right? I knew him before he had the substance use disorder. I knew him before the drinking. So I do think that the mental health played a large part. Do I still have a little bit of anger and resentment? Probably. Has it gotten better? Absolutely. So after I left, the drinking continued, obviously, right? And he got into some more trouble. And unfortunately, he died a couple of years after I left. And oddly, when that happened,
It's kind of freeing.
yeah, you're sad, you're sad that he never got the help that he needed. But I think I can speak for me, Zachary. I think I can speak for all of us. It was almost a relief that we don't have to worry about if he drinks again. I don't have to worry about if he tries to come and break in our house when he's drinking. I don't have to worry about him stealing things from me anymore. But sad all at the same time. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's kind of that combination feeling a little bit. And so, once we left and we moved away from our town, as a single mom with 3 kids who's never lived by herself before, it was scary. But now, happily, at the end of the tunnel, I remarried, and they have that father figure that they always longed for. And so I don't know. Now looking back, would I've done things differently? Absolutely. But you can't second guess, because you do the best you can.
I guess kind of on the flip side, for me, there was no separating him from the alcohol, and there still isn't in my mind. To me, that is him. And I guess for the good or the bad, there were good days, sure, but to me, there were a lot more bad days. So you try to remember the good days, but to me, he will always be the person who abused alcohol and did what he did. And I mean, I second everything she said. It was him dying. Absolutely it's kind of a surreal feeling almost. You're sad that he's gone. For me, I was angry that, you don't get the opportunity to talk to him about it as a grown person who can talk to him that way. But at the same time, it's freeing.
I think my biggest suggestion to someone who's in that, and my biggest hope for someone who finds themselves in similar situations, is that it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't make you look like a lesser person to go and get help. Get the help that you need. Reach out for help sooner rather than later. It's not your fault. You are worthy of having the help, and you can't change that person. That's the biggest thing. You by yourself you can't make a difference. That person has to make their own difference. Don't be fooled that you are protecting your children. Don't think that they don't see what's happening and they don't feel what's happening, because from one mother to another, or to a father, or to whomever, they know more than you think, and they sense more than you think, and get them the help they need as well.
My biggest thing, if there's a kid out there that is going through this, know that you're not the only one. I mean, because me growing up, you feel like you're the only one. You're on this island alone where you are different than everybody else, and you are dealing with something different than everybody else. And I know now that there's other people out there that are going through it, and know that it's okay to feel the way you feel about it. And that at the end of the tunnel, there's always light.
Well, thank you to the Dawson family for sharing that heartfelt story, and helping us all see that side to substance use disorder and addiction. Kara, are you joining us on the phone today?
She might have to unmute herself.
So Kara, I'm not sure if you're on mute or not.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we can.
Sorry, I'm here.
No problem. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you for that. So we'd like to open up for questions and for Kara. I believe Zachary's probably in class today, isn't he?
Zachary is in class, but I did reach out to him to see if he could dial in with us.
Okay.
So he may be able to join us here in just a couple minutes. I'm sorry for our tardiness.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Well, are there any questions from the audience? You can either ask those in the chat window or you can unmute your line and ask them directly. Dr. Anwar, do you have a question to start us off?
Yeah, I think, Kara, when we did this recording with you, I have a question, and we talked about this a little bit too. That with your husband's substance use disorder, at the time that you were in that relationship, were you able to separate the two, the person and then the disease, or were you even aware? Because I know that Zach had mentioned that he wasn't even aware that there was like a separate person and then there was this disease.
Right. So honestly, when I was in the situation, no, I couldn't separate the two, just because I was very angry. I didn't understand. And so I was not separating the two at all. And as Zach mentioned, when we were there, he didn't even think about it. It didn't even cross his mind even until we were doing the interview that, oh, I never even thought of that way. And he talked about that a lot on the way home, about how, you know, it kind of put him a little bit at ease to be able to separate it. But no, when I was in the middle of it and didn't really understand it, I couldn't separate it. I was just too angry to think about how it could be separate. So the answer is no. I didn't. I can now, but at the time and when you're going through it, I think it's really hard to see it in both lights.
Thank you so much. And then I had another question. I think one of the things that was raised with your specific story was the issues that veterans and their families face in terms of the mental health issues that arise after they return back from their deployment, and then the access to treatment. I know this happened at a time when there wasn't a lot of awareness about the mental health issues, but even now the access to treatment when it comes to mental health is an issue. So how much do you think that the trauma that your family went through can be attributed to just that lack of access? And what do you think is available now that wasn't available back then?
So the first part, I think a lot of what we went through really was attributed to the lack of mental health availability. I know that we spent a lot of time at the VA, especially when my ex-husband first came back from the Gulf War. And I think I mentioned at one part that I was begging for help. I was begging for someone to listen and to realize what was happening in the home, because he was a great player out in public. No one would have ever known that that's how he was. And I was begging for the help. And really what we came up across is that he might have gotten a 10-minute session and some more medication. Here, take this pill, take that pill, and it will work. Well, he didn't take his medicine because that's not where he was at. His medicine was his alcohol. And when I would ask for that help, it was, you need to be more understanding. you know, he's good. This medicine will fix everything. And so I think that we were kind of, just weren't really listened to. I think the changes now are that they are realizing that, especially our servicemen and women, when they're coming back, they need a time for de-escalation from being in a wartime or overseas to coming home. And so they aren't just coming off the plane, coming straight home. And we were not prepared for the changes that we were going to see. He was not a drinker before he left, and he was an alcoholic when he came home, and he was violent. These were not, this isn't who I sent, and how do I deal with it? And I think they're a little bit more in tune now to helping those families and helping our veterans, kind of identifying and working through some of that PTSD and those issues, certainly a lot more than they were before. But I really do think that the lack of that mental health piece for us during that time was a huge contributor to just not being able to get to any kind of resolve. It was really about giving him more medication, and then the struggle for me to trying to get him to take that medication to hopefully get back. So now I know that the struggle for him was also real. So the alcohol was a medication for him, for sure. But there was certainly that lack, and I'm glad to see that they're trying to make strides. Do I think it's 100% no, but I do think they're trying to make some strides to make that mental health aspect a little bit better for them.
Thank you for that answer. We did have a question come in through the chat from Sherman with the Fayette County Harm Reduction Alliance, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later this afternoon as well. But she's asking, moving forward, has the family as a unit had therapy for the trauma of this experience?
So my answer to that is yes and no. I have 3 children, so 2 of them which you didn't hear from, and 2 of them, the 2 that we didn't hear from, I actually invited to come to the interview, and they just aren't at that place right now. One, my middle son says that he's closed that chapter in his life. And my daughter does have some counts. She was the youngest when we left. And although she says she doesn't remember any negative, she is suppressing a lot of it. So I have taken all 3 of them separately because I feel like all 3 of them handle it differently, including myself. So we've all have had some counseling. The difficulty is that getting them to open up, even now, is a struggle. So the younger 2 just don't want to even talk about it, and they won't say anything when I take them into their session. And Zachary, the oldest that you heard from on the meeting today, he's angry. He's just very angry. And so he almost refuses anymore to go and talk to anybody because he doesn't feel like anybody really understands. This interview was the most therapeutic thing ever. And on the way home, he said to me, I would really like to do this more often because it made me feel so much better. So the answer is yes. I've tried to take them, and I continue to try to take them because I won't give up. I think that they all need that outlet, including myself. However, it's just getting them to open up, which is the hardest thing.
Thank you for that. Zachary, were you able to join us? I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to share if you were on. Doesn't sound like. Any questions from any of our audience who are participating today? Well, Kara, are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience today?
No, I just hope that our story helps somebody to know that please reach out if you're in a situation, reach out and get the help that you need. You're not in it alone. And there are avenues to take to get the help that you need.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story. Your story is also on YouTube because we share this with the International Overdose Day, last day of August, for those who want to watch this or share it with loved ones as well. So thank you for joining us today, Kara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.